Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first video in the R Basics R tutorial. In this video, we're just going to be going over some intro things about R and RStudio just to get used to what the environment looks like and to get used to some very basic operations that we can do with R. Now, what I have open here is RStudio. In RStudio, we code in R, but RStudio creates a nice organized just software for us to use and actually execute our code. In this top left corner that we see here, this is called the source. And this is where we can write in our code. We can run our code line by line or in its entirety. And here is where we actually can save our code as well. In the bottom left quadrant, we have the console. And when we write code in the console, we get immediate feedback. We can get answers. We can run our lines immediately, but there is no saving in the console. So if we want to save our code, we write it in the source. If we don't care and we just want an immediate answer, we write it in the console. The other two quadrants that we have over here, the one at the top is our environment. So when we save objects in R, they will show up in the environment. This includes any sort of variable, vector, dataset, list, things like that. Now, this final quadrant, the bottom right, this is kind of like a hodgepodge of things. So we have this first tab, which looks at all the files that we have in our working directory. When we export any plots, they will show up here when we are using an R script. And I will talk about the different types of files that we can have in R and RStudio. Also, with R, it is an open source type of programming language. So what that means is that people create packages and upload them. R isn't owned by anyone. There are moderators, but in general, the general population create these packages that include functions that the general public can use. So when we are coding in R, a lot of it is based on us downloading the proper packages that we need to do what we want to do. And the final tab that I'll talk about is the Help tab. If we ever want to know more information about a certain function, then I will show you how you can find out more information about it. And it'll give you what the different parameters in the function are, or what the different arguments are, I should say, what it outputs, and any sort of references about the function. Now, within RStudio, you can create a lot of different files. What I have open here is an R script, so we can see how it works. If I have, we'll talk about this in a sec, but when I write lines, we have the line numbers here. If I want to write any words, I have to write them as comments. So this is what an R script looks like. Now, when we want to create a new file, we go to File, New File, and these are all the different types of files that you can create. It's a little bit overwhelming. What I have here is the R script, like I just mentioned, but another important one that we're going to be talking about is an R Markdown file. So when you click that you want to create an R Markdown file, you'll be prompted with this pop-up window. The output can be an HTML, a PDF, or a Word document. Just note that if you want to output your R Markdown file as a PDF, then you require tech on your computer. So it's just an extra step, but it is really nice output if we do have it as a PDF. When we have our R Markdown file, what's nice about it is great for writing reports. Specifically in this class, we're talking about statistical reports because we can have writing and we have chunks of code that we run. So if we're writing, say, a statistical analysis, we can write an introduction to whatever we're doing, have the chunk of code that actually does the analysis. The output will show up underneath the code, and then we can write our interpretations and any sort of conclusions that we want to make. Now, I'm going to go back to the R script just so we can talk about some of the basic functions that we have in R. So R, in its very basic form, is just a very fancy calculator. If we work down in the console here, you can see that we can do things like adding, subtracting, multiplying, and yes, dividing as well. We can do more complicated things. So if we have 47 times 9, we're going to divide this by 3 and then add 17. And R does follow the order of operations, BEDMAS. And then we have functions that do a little bit more complicated math as well. So we have the exponential function, which is just here, e to the power of 3. We have the natural logarithm. If we want log, say, base 10, we would do something like that. So, like I said, in its very basic form, R is a very fancy calculator. Now, I mentioned that if we are ever curious about how a function works, we can easily get help with that function. All we need to do is put the question mark and whatever the name of the function is. Oh, whoops. So to run this, I'm working on a Mac. So I click Command Return. It'll be different if you're on a Windows. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but you can do that, or you can just click Run and it'll run everything. So you can see I just put question mark exp, which is the function that we did for the exponential function, and a description of the function shows up in the corner here with what the arguments are, how you use it, any sort of other details. And this works for any function. If we have a package that we want to install, we would need to use the install.packages function and put the name of the function in quotations. So this is a very popular package that's used in data science. Once you have installed the package, you only need to do that once. And then to use it, we just use the function library, put in the name of the package, and then it's loaded and we can use all of the functions that are inside that package. One more thing that I want to talk about in this intro to R basics is that we need to assign objects a name in R. So say we have an object, maybe we'll call it X. We can assign this the value of 1. And the way that we assign it is using this arrow. So we have this with the dash, and we can assign it to whatever we want. So it can be a letter, it can be a whole name. We just need to give that value a name. So here we're doing a value. This is true for any list, for any data set, vector, whatever. And once we save these values, or these objects, let's say, then they show up in our environment. So actually, I lied. There are 2 more things that I want to talk about in this intro to R video. First is that when we are naming objects in R, the naming is case sensitive. We have named this object just the value 1. We named it lowercase x. If I want to see what lowercase x is containing, I would just write the letter X and run that. Remember, if you're on a Mac, you can either do Command Return. If you're on a Windows, you're going to have to search out what you do, or you can highlight the line and press Run just to run a single line. And we see down here that the value of X is 1. However, this is lowercase x. If I try to run uppercase X, it says that capital X is not found. Like I said, R is case sensitive, so it's important to build good habits when it comes to the nomenclature of your objects. How are you naming the objects? Are you always using lowercase letters? Are you always using uppercase? Are you using a mix? Just make that consistent so that you avoid coming into errors such as this one, especially when you start writing more sophisticated code. And the last thing, since we are talking about building good habits, is about commenting your code. This is not only for other people who will be reading your code. This is for future you, maybe a week down the line, a month down the line, a year down the line, because no matter how much time has passed, even though you wrote it, it's still going to be a little fuzzy when you come back to code after a little bit of time. So if you comment it properly and in a lot of detail, there is no mystery as to what you are trying to do within your code. The way that we comment is by using the hashtag symbol or the number symbol, and anything written after the hashtag is a comment and it does not run. It's just information for us to know what we are doing. So this is a comment. And an example of a comment could be, say I'm taking e to the power of 2. This is the exponential function. So here I know what this does, taking this because I am interested in the value. Obviously, this is a very silly example. We would know that this is just taking the e to the power of 2, but it is important to build these good habits and get into the habit of commenting your code so that, like before, when you get into more sophisticated code writing, it just comes naturally to comment your code. This is all I wanted to talk about in the first video. In the next video, we're going to talk about working with vectors and talk about different operations that we can do with them, how to create a vector, and just what it looks like in R. So thank you.